a very good intention, and then they try to enact government policies, and those government policies lead to bad unintended consequences. And that's one reason that we oppose most forms of government, where a libertarian is not an anarchist, although there are some anarcho-capitalists that would associate themselves with the Libertarian Party. I myself am a constitutional Republican, actually. So there's different strands. And, you know, the bottom line is that government is force, and a government can force someone to do something without recourse. They can, and if you don't obey, then they'll put you in jail, or they'll bankrupt you through lawsuits, either you or a corporation. So, hold on just a second.
Yeah, right. The do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, we believe in a voluntary society. In a voluntary society, you let's say you and your employer have a voluntary relationship. If you have an issue with an employer, then you can choose to leave. No one is forcing you to stay in that work environment. And likewise, if you aren't meeting your employer's needs, then they can voluntarily let you go. And, you know, if you are buying a service right now, you are voluntarily doing the show. No one is forcing you to do the show. No one's forcing me to call into the show. And by empowering people to make choices, people choose what's right for themselves, and they usually choose better than someone who is 800 miles away in Washington, D.C. They don't necessarily make the best choices for you. So we believe in as many things being voluntary as possible.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I try to get a lot of people to understand that in a manner of speaking, for every dollar you spend, for an example, in a manner of speaking, that you're voting for something. You know, I hear way too many people complain and egg on stereo over China, but almost everything they buy is made in China at Walmart. You know,
right?
And so I don't understand how people are against a global economy, yet by spending all that money, effectively they're voting that that's okay. That, you know, the global economy is okay, empowering China is okay. So again, it kind of gets back to a, you know, say one thing and do another.
I mean, a lot of people, what they'll say is, well, somebody needs to do something about that. Somebody needs to make Walmart buy American.
Yeah, someone else needs to do something about it. They don't take responsibility themselves.
You know, personal responsibility is a huge foundation of libertarianism. We think that, you know, Walmart is good and bad. I mean, there are issues with Walmart. You know, people are upset that they've squeezed out a lot of the mom and pops, that they have business practices that really force small and minor, not minor, but medium-level corporations to lower their prices to get entry into the shelves. You know, they're sort of corporate bullies. But on the flip side, Walmart, if you go to any food bank in Indiana, or really most food banks around the nation, you know, I traveled to 2 food banks about a month ago, one in Seymour, Indiana, and another one up in Anderson, and or actually it was Muncie, to be accurate. The majority of their food in both of those food banks were donated by Walmart. Walmart, quietly, they try not to brag about this, they give a tremendous amount of food to food banks like Gleaners, and they employ a tremendous amount of people in the United States. You know, so there's always going to be good and bad. I mean, nothing is guaranteed in life. You don't have a right to leave your house and, you know, return completely safe. There's no guarantee that that's going to happen, and the more that we try to get someone else to fix something for us, the worse things are going to get. And I think that is a huge reason why we are at the point that we're at in this country. Why Congress has a 6% approval rating. People have let.
I didn't realize it was that high.
Yeah, there are. You statistically, you can find someone who doesn't believe that we landed on the moon before you can find someone who thinks Congress is doing a good job. And that's not a joke. That's the absolute truth.
No, I believe you, sir.
And so we have given up personal responsibility to people who are central planners in Washington, D.C., and then when they're not able to make everything perfect, we start to get upset. Well, we have to start looking at ourselves, and we have to start asking ourselves, are we part of the problem? Are our own attitudes part of the problem? And I know that it's not necessarily good pandering for a political figure to come on a radio show and say, are we part of the problem? But that's frankly the truth, and it's a hard truth that we all just need to accept. Are we settling for less in this country because we want someone else to take care of us?
Well,
and I certainly don't, and that's why I'm a part of the Libertarian Party. I'm the executive director of the Libertarian Party of Indiana. I work full time for the party. It's Sunday night at 9:30 my time, and I'm doing an interview. I work nonstop on behalf of the party, and there are a ton of people in the Libertarian Party that do the same, because we want to restore that sense of, removing government force, removing government intervention, and restoring personal responsibility to our society, not just in government, but it's a lifestyle. You got to live that. You got to make those choices.
Yeah, Mr. Spangle, can I call you Chris?
Sure. Yeah, please.
Okay, Chris, I have actually two questions real quick. What would be one of your answers to somebody that says, "Oh, well, we need protection against these big corporations that are basically going to, jip us out of a bunch of money, or they're going to pollute our water supplies, or anything like that. We need government agencies to protect us against various, corporations that might partake in that type of activity." What would you say to those individuals?
Well, there has to be, and this is why I'm a constitutional Republican and not an anarchist. And I know as I give this answer, there's going to be anarchists that are going to say, well, he's not a real libertarian like I am. But there's, probably 6 or 7 different types of libertarians. There has to be some rules in society, and those rules that we have in society have to be written down and equally applied, and the rules have to be clear and easily understood, and they have to be evenly applied. And what we have in society now is a tax code that is essentially a weapon, where major corporations like GE, can take the tax code and buy politicians to rig the tax code in their favor to get rid of small or medium-sized competitors so GE can grow into the world's largest corporation. You have a tax code that has to be simplified. I'm a fan of the fair tax, but there's a lot of flat tax people. I'm not going to advocate for one system or another, because that's my personal opinion. Like I said, I personally like the fair tax the best. And then that is essentially a consumption tax where every person, we start out with a 25 to 35% sales tax, and then you abolish every other federal tax, every business tax, which is essentially double taxation. You abolish income tax, you abolish Social Security tax, you abolish every other tax that we have, and you just pay consumption tax. So the rich end up paying more because they buy more, and they also pay the same tax rate that you pay because they're not rigging the tax code for their own benefit. But Warren Buffett doesn't pay income tax. Warren Buffett pays capital gains taxes because of his investment.
Earlier in this broadcast,
that is a huge answer for that. And for things like environmental concerns, there should be some rules on corporations and how to handle things like toxic waste, nuclear waste. You can't have, we have to be good stewards of the earth. But are those rules, things like the Energy Department and the Environmental Protection Agency, they have gone too far, and they have moved on from protecting the environment at the basic level to harming business and using the government and other corporations use things like the EPA as a weapon against other competitors. That's just not right. That's crony capitalism is really what it is.
Right, and it seems to me, on my thoughts on some of the points you're hitting on there, to me it's a 10th Amendment issue that I don't see why the states alone cannot handle this. I mean, they have the authority to arrest, they have the authority to fine, they have the authority to yank permits. So I often hear the argument that, well, if it was left to the states, then Indiana would just allow a corporation to dump waste into the river and get Kentucky. Now, to me, the idea that Indiana, for example, would allow a company or an entity to dump, say, toxic waste into water and air that we share that moves back and forth freely, to me is insane.
Go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
We're not letting anybody dump toxic waste of any kind into any river, period. I mean,
right.
You're right in that it's a 10th Amendment issue, and this is something that we have unmoored ourselves in society from the basic notion that the Constitution and the federal government is very limiting. And we have 50 states. Originally, we had 13 that created the federal government. The federal government did not spawn itself. The federal government did not create the states. The states created the federal government.
Absolutely.
And the states said, we have the ultimate authority over everything. And here are 17 basic things that you as the federal government are allowed to do. And anything else that you'd like to do, you're not allowed. Those powers are reserved to the states. The 9th and the 10th Amendment are very clear. Any power not expressly enumerated in the Constitution is reserved for the states. Enumerated, if you're not familiar, I mean, it's a very basic term that says if it's not written out clearly in the Constitution, then the states are allowed to handle it. And then you have 50 little laboratories of democracy that can tool. So if you don't like the eco laws here in Indiana or in Kentucky, where it probably would be a little more lax, then move to Oregon or California, where I'm sure it would be a little bit stricter.
Right.
That is a very basic concept that we in America have lost, that sense that our federal government is not a Leviathan. It is supposed to be very small, and we actually, if you want to know what the 17 things are that are enumerated in the Constitution, first, go to our website, lpin.org, okay? And if you go to lpin.org and you click on the free resources page, at the very bottom of that page, we have some research. And one of them is an Indiana and a federal constitution annotated by Andy Horning, who's running for United States Senate for the Libertarian Party this year. And he's from Owen County. And we also have 2 documents that outline how state and the federal government are supposed to operate, along with some problems and solutions. And we list out the 17 things in the federal research of what the government is supposed to do. That's it. That's all they're supposed to do. Everything else is left to the states.
Right. I got another quick question, Chris. This disdain for the Congress and all the presidents that have been in office the past 20 years has been festering up quite a bit, and kind of went into overdrive whenever George Bush was in office, and then once Barack Obama through his campaign, hope and change, it died down there. But have you noticed an increase in support or numbers to the Libertarian Party ever since I say about a year and a half to 2 years into Mr. Obama's presidency? Have you been noticing a steady increase? Or
I started in October of 2008, 2 or 3 weeks before that election. Mm-hmm. And still the most phone calls that I've had just from people who are who are just inquiring about the party came after John McCain lost the presidency to Barack Obama, because a lot of Republicans said, well, I did the dirty deed. I supported John McCain. I didn't want to. I violated my own principles this one time to keep this communist out of office, and I failed, and I'm ready to stand on principle.